Carolina at Jacksonville, and Jacksonville down to a 6.5-point home favorite. The line was as high as 7 earlier in the week. Low total for this game as well, a bit lower than the Saints box, total of 38. And these two teams, believe it or not, when you look at EPA per play, pretty similar since week 13, which goes back to when the Panthers fired Frank Reich in his first season as the Carolina head coach. Jacksonville ranks 20th in EPA per play, offensive EPA per play, since that juncture of the season, just 4 spots ahead of Carolina. Of course, Trevor Lawrence dealing with a knee injury, ankle, concussion, and shoulder injuries since that point in the season, but still concerning. And we mentioned the impact of a banged up Zay Jones too last week, especially with Ridley not being able to play in the slot. So how are you betting Panthers at Jags, Mo?
I took some 7 with the Panthers. That was the last one that was left on the board. I still think it's fine at 6.5. I don't think I would go much lower than 6.5, unless obviously you figure out that Trevor Lawrence is out and you're able to beat the steam. This Jags offense, I mean, we've talked about it a few times, just with no outside receivers at this point. It's been pretty broken for the past few weeks, and you have Calvin Ridley unable to really perform on the outside. I mean, he had a better game this past week, but I watched some of that game, and I feel like most of his production honestly came in garbage time when they were pretty buried by the Bucs. Like, that's when he scored. That's when he had another 1 or 2 medium to long plays. I still think he's probably going to be inefficient overall playing on the outside. And you add a shoulder injury to Trevor Lawrence here, and that's in addition to his ankle injury. I think everybody's kind of zoning in on the shoulder injury, wondering how that affects him. But I think we need to keep in mind, like, I've sprained my ankle. Obviously Trevor Lawrence is like 10 years younger than me, but it took me like 8 months to be good or whatever, so
the medical opinion of Mo Nuwwarah. How about that?
But this is normal. Like, people sprain their ankles and it takes a long time to get right. Like, we see it with basketball players all the time, and I don't think we can be confident he's 100% lower body. And now you add a shoulder injury to that. And it would be different maybe if this was a team that had some sort of running game, but the Jaguars cannot block at all up front. I know this very well as a Travis Etienne fantasy owner, and very frustrating watch at times, watching them try to open holes and just can be completely unable to. So, they don't have anything to fall back on if the passing game isn't working. And the Panthers D, which I was way too high on, I guess, preseason, but they have started to play some decent football. If you go back to basically since their bye, I mean, they've only had 2 bad games. It was Dallas week 11 and then last week against Green Bay. With this total, I mean, it's just basically like, can Bryce Young score 17 points? I think with the way the Jags defense is playing, it's definitely possible. They've actually been worse than Carolina in the second half of the season. So I don't think it's out of line to think the Panthers could have some success. And with a total of 38, you don't need a whole lot here, most likely. Basically, the way I'm looking at this game is there's 3 scenarios that's going to play out with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, either he's fine, and this is just like a mediocre bet, maybe slightly bad, because there was look-ahead numbers with the Jags closer to 10. Either, so that scenario, then there's Lawrence is hurt, and he plays hurt, and this is, I think, a good bet. And then there's Lawrence is out, and you're just going to get a ton of CLV no matter what, because this is going to close 4.5 or something. So I'm feeling pretty decent about the Panthers, and even though it's maybe not quite as good now as it was when I got it, I still think it's okay to play.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jacksonville's defensive regression or just poor play since over the last 4 weeks or so. They rank, since week 13, number 31 in dropback success rate allowed. But Tyson Campbell and Andre Sisco are expected, reportedly, to get more workload this week, which theoretically gives a little more upside to this defense, or just a little bit more bandage on their play of late. And also you're playing Bryce Young against vulnerable defense, yes, but are they as vulnerable as the Packers and a Joe Barry-led defense? we'll see, especially if Campbell and Cisco are on the field a bit more. I'm just a little bit concerned with this being a bounce back spot for the Jags. I get your point too if Lawrence doesn't go and it's CJ Beathard, but Jacksonville coming off 4 straight losses. So a huge game for them with the division still up for grabs.